Wow. Well, there's a quick abrupt stop to the music. Hi, Alicia. How you doing?
I'm all right. I am weathering our little Alberta blizzard today. I don't know about you, Mark, but there's a
Hmm.
lot of snow and there's ice under that snow and vehicles are sideways and buses aren't running, so it's always exciting.
I know the weather here is one thing that we can always count on to change, hopefully. So I was contemplating not even shoveling the walk this time, but
Mm.
2 days in a row that's cold. Now a driveway that's packed with snow. Well, I have one wild card in my pocket that allows me to be a little risky. It's called a 23-year-old son that is working from home too. So I heard him out there this morning. He was scraping the walk. So good times, good times. It pays to have children. See, that's why. If you don't want to shovel your walk, just make sure you have children, and then they're your little workers. So fantastic. So Thursday, November the 3rd today, and we've had a little bit of movement in the world of immigration, including new levels plans that have come out. We've done some videos and talked a little bit about that. There's some pleasant things that have been revealed for PR applicants who've been languishing, and we're hoping that things are going to pick up and expand, and there's going to be more opportunities, especially for all those people that are here in Canada that are hoping and waiting for a CEC draw because the CRS scores have just been so high. And it's nice the minister was kind enough to give another 18-month post-grad work permit special policy, Alicia, not an extension.
That's right.
And so people have been able to benefit from that. But yeah, it's great to see some positive news and something to look forward to for those people both inside and outside Canada. So all right, let's see who we got connecting in here today. We got Nassim. And remember, if you're a first-time viewer, post in the comments. Yes, we are indeed live. I had someone asking that when I was doing one of the special session I did on the levels plans on Monday. There was someone that posted a comment and he said, is this even live? He's doing a lot of talking. And I'm like, seriously? Okay, the whole purpose of this is to explain what's happening. Anyways, he felt bad after. He's like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize. These are live, you guys. Alicia and I block off an hour, each week to do this, and we hope that this is beneficial. We feel it is, and so when we see people coming around and that we start to see over and over, it's awesome. So yes. All right. Well, let's see what we've got here. So Nassim says, good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon to you, Nassim. Aisha says hello, Mark and Alicia. Aisha says hello to Alicia. That's like a tongue twister. Ariane, hello. Good to see you. Consultant, where are you practicing, Ariane? She says, oh my, keep the snow there. Oh, Nova Scotia. It is sunny and 12 degrees. Oh, that is not fun. Let's see. Do I have an appropriate response for that? I don't know. Let's see. Oh, I turned my sound down. Dang it. That was going to be so good. Let's try this again. Nope, that's not it. There. Okay, there we go. That's how I feel about your comment there, Ariane. Sunny and
Mark,
12
we
degrees.
we have to let others have their joy when we're stuck in the -18 weather.
Okay. Okay. All right. I won't be too hard on you, Ariane. Okay. 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 Good to see you. Hello. We've got Sebastian Guzman. Thanks for connecting in, Sebastian. Um, we'll get to the questions just a little bit. G2D2, you are a very frequent viewer. G2 here. What is your real name? Although you sound like R2D2, like your Star Wars or something, but that's pretty cool. Okay. Oh, I love this. Okay, now I'm not quite sure, Abhishek, if you're saying LMIA and it's just spelled funny, or it's just lame as in this whole thing is lame. And hey, that's entirely possible. The good thing for you, Abhishek, is that you have a choice not to watch it. So you can choose that, or if you have a question, don't hesitate to post it after. We post everything, even the lame comments. So Jennifer, good to see you. How are you, Jennifer? So we look forward to connecting with you. I know we're having some discussions there about some stuff for you. So good to connect with you. Okay, Anshuman, good to see you. Says hello. We've got Yosevich, who's in Winnipeg. That's where my University of Manitoba alumni I am. That's where I went to law school. Okay. Anne Schumann says, how's it going? Alicia, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. It's, trying to keep away the frostbite and manage the dogs and their paws, and then make sure to get through a whole bunch of immigration emails and applications and submissions as soon as I get back into the house. So it's good.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, why don't we've got AK. Oh, AK is over in Afghanistan. Very cool. Connecting on Facebook. Okay. So what we'll do is, as always, we take just a couple minutes just to talk about some of the things that are happening in this fine world of Canadian immigration. I think many of you are pretty much aware by now that we have these levels plans that were released, and I talked about those a little bit in my live stream yesterday. Alicia, if you were to kind of pull out one or maybe two little positives or nuggets that that you thought about when these levels plans were released for next year and all the way to 2025, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's really looking at the overall numbers of how the economic categories are increasing relative to everything else. And so immigration knows that Canada's population is aging. We don't have a lot of people who are having multiple children anymore. And we really need working age applicants who are strongly educated, who are good with English and French to be able to be filling those positions in Canada that we simply can't fill right now. We have a relatively high rate of unemployment, and that's difficult for employers. It's difficult for everybody else as well who you know, it, we're not able to get things as we need them, services, deliveries, and that sort of thing. So, looking at the overall numbers, it is trending positively, and immigration is really going to be focusing on the economic streams, right? So, CEC and FSW and the provincial nominee programs as well. So those will be increasing quite a bit over the next few years, and the overall numbers are going up also in proportion to what they have been historically. And it's simply because Canada doesn't have a replacement birth rate. We've got an aging population. We need workers, and we really encourage people who are strongly educated and are going to contribute to Canada to be coming through our immigration programs.
I know when I looked at this, Alicia, and one of the things you're pointing out, I'll just highlight it down here. You can see, guys, the total economic projections. So these are just the economic categories. And then up at the top here, we have the overall, how many they're planning on bringing in. And so as you work your way across the top, you can see this is a lot of people have been talking about that the overall levels, lots of people, 500, 500. Well, possibly they have built in the possibility of even going up to 550. And then as we go down to the economic, it's really been crushing at least the last little stretch here because the TR to PRs took up so many spots. But now you can see as we go forward here, these in the federal high skill, as the TR to PR kind of winds its way down, and even a low of 19,500 is possible. I guess it depends on how many they get through this year, you guys. That's really what these numbers are saying. But you can look, 82,000 is where they're shooting here with a high of 88 for next year. And then the following year, it's going to jump to 109. And the following year after that, 114, with even a high potentially of 121,000. That's just for these. And then the overall programs, you can see they're climbing from 266 all the way up to 301,000, which includes, of course, the PNPs, which you can now see, if you look at these numbers, the provincial nominee programs are actually admitting more than the traditional federal high skill, which is your CEC FSW. So that's one of the interesting things that I saw was just that now the PNPs are growing and becoming more popular. And hey, if let's face it, Alicia, if the government says that one of their priorities and what they're looking at is trying to match, the needs of our labor market, well, who's in the best position to figure that out? It's the individual provinces themselves. And so when you have the minister who now has these magical powers to decide on targeted draws, they have a lot to learn from the provinces as to who they're actually going to be pulling from. The
Yeah.
OINP has been doing this for a while, targeted draws. So,
Yeah. And it is interesting, Mark, too, as we move into the end of the year, right? We're in November now. And as people may or may not know, each of the provinces have a quota, basically, of how many nominations they are able to give out every year. And Sometimes what happens is the provinces actually kind of shut down their intake when it gets close to the end of the year, and they don't really give you any notice of this. And then the other thing that's throwing a little bit of a wrench in the works is that tier is coming out, right? So we are looking at this switch from the 2016 NOC to the 2021 NOC, and it's also called tier, TEER, and that's going to be happening in just a couple weeks. So November 16th is the rollout date. And what's been happening because of that is some of the provincial nominee programs, and I've written a blog about this on our 5 key tier takeaways. Some of the provincial nominee programs, for example, BC and Manitoba, are actually not doing draws right now because they need to revamp their system. Hi, Simba.
Yeah.
They need to revamp their systems, and so they have to update their entire platforms to be able to do their new PNP draws with the new 5-digit NOC system. So if you thought you were okay and you had a BC PNP application in there, be aware of the fact that you have to recreate your profile after November 16th. The other interesting thing that's happening is that the week of November 14th, the job bank is updating all their median wage rates. And so that can affect anybody who's looking at doing an LMIA application. If you've got an employer, make sure that your employers are double checking what the updated median wage rates are when it comes to mid-November.
Yes. All right. Let's take a peek at some more comments and questions here. Some of them are actually pretty funny. Okay. I can't help but pull this one up. All right. This is for you, Chanel. So will Chanel Rosenbaum do a live Q&A? Because I haven't decided who to hire from your firm. So I would like to have an informed idea about every lawyer in the firm. Well, among us, I will relay that to Chanel. But one thing I can confirm without any equivocation is that no matter who you hire, if you ask some question that one of us doesn't have an immediate answer to, guess what happens? We communicate amongst all 4 of us. So anytime you book a consult with someone, you're really getting 4 immigration lawyers. So I'll just throw that one out there. And for those of you who are wondering, what is this about? I'll just slide over here and we'll just go to our main site right here. And I'm really, really happy with Igor, what he's been doing. He's been working really hard to build our site out so that we have a lot of really helpful information on each of the different types of services that we offer, study and immigrate and all of these different headings and subcategories. But this is where we're at, speak to a lawyer. And in fairness, we've considered, you guys, just removing the individual selection process, because whether you go with Alicia, Chanel, Cedric, or myself, we really do work as a team. And yes, Alicia and I have been at this a few more years than Cedric and Chanel. But the reality is the strength of the firm really comes from each of the lawyers and the collective knowledge and experience that we put into it. So yes, and it's as simple as clicking on the link and moving forward. And for those of you who are wondering, well, what do other people have to say? I don't even know if I can pull this up, Alicia. If I do Google reviews.
If you go to our website, Mark, and then
Yeah,
you
here
can
it
click
is.
what, yeah.
Yeah, so if you look here, so we've got a 98. I think we have almost a little bit more, but yeah, we're sitting at 4.9. And I'll tell you, the reality is, if you ever see any firm or consultant or whoever who has a 5-star rating with 100 reviews, you can pretty much guarantee that something is fishy with that. And, if you look at those, I still remember, Alicia, some of them, like this one that was a long time ago, you are never going to please everybody, never. But the thing is, you can see my response here to this one person. I think there's maybe one. This person, I don't even know if they were actual real person or if I chewed someone out online because they posted a stupid comment and then they left it. But you can see here, there's literally 2. This one, we responded to this one and the person never even reached out. So that pretty much tells me that this person, you can't, it's impossible to please every single person. But if you look at these reviews, and I'm going to show you even the newest ones. So look at this one here. This is my favorite here. Alicia has been extremely helpful and very professional. She answered all my questions about the Canada visa and immigration procedures in great detail. More than satisfied with the service. And then we've got one here. I guess someone was happy with me and Gan and Raman here. And we got Cedric on here. And so you can go through, you can see here, I rarely work with lawyers when dealing with immigration, let alone write online reviews. But Alicia, the lawyer who I worked with, is a phenomenal immigration lawyer, one of the best. And I won't go through here and read it all, but you guys can see how this works, right? So this actually is what we're shooting for. That's what we're trying to achieve, is that no matter who you book within the firm, that you're going to get a phenomenal result. And what I mean by that is you're gonna get your questions answered. You're gonna feel like the money that you spent was well worth it, and that you actually have a plan. And what I tell Alicia, a lot of the people that book consults with me, sometimes I don't have a solution for them. And sometimes the answer is, you know what, it's best not to try to continue pursuing Canada, because your chances of being able to come or, are almost non-existent. And I find that those consults are just as important as those that, you where you can devise a nice little long-term strategy, because then people aren't wasting time and they can consider what they want to do, and they can, make decisions about even how to better their situation in their home country if they know Canada isn't an option, or look to other countries. So,
Yeah.
all right, there we go. So that's awesome amongst us. That's great. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay. Oh yeah. So Junaid, I'm gonna pull yours up here. So Junaid, when you have a long question like that, usually what happens is I will ring that bell and then direct people to slide back here and book a consult right here with Alicia. So ultimately, if you have a long question that has a lot of pieces to it that's really specific, it's just not possible for us to properly, and we wouldn't even ethically try to provide a legal advice to you without knowing all the situation, all the facts. So yes, so that's why, Junaid, we're not pulling up your whole question there. Okay. Okay. So Abhishek, let's see here. Okay, so Abhishek, let's see if I can figure this out. It says, "Hey, Mark and Alicia, my question is about." Okay, it's not lame. We're not lame. It's a mix-up of the acronym Labor Market Impact Assessment. Although that is really interesting because it should be LMIA. So sometimes I see Lima, LIMA, but this is a new concoction, and I kind of like that. That's kind of, yeah, it is, because they are lame. I'll be honest, they are lame, especially when you're trying to get those approved. Okay, so an LMIA work permit and work-based, actually, which one document need fresh and unexperienced can able to. Oh, I have no clue what you're writing there, Abhishek. Let's see if we can puzzle something out of this. And unexperienced can able to. Okay, I wonder. Okay, maybe Alicia, maybe you can just answer what an LMIA is and how one gets one of those things. He says, "Can I get your Gmail ID, any personal communication?" Abhishek, it's all through the consult. So slide over here, and you can book a consult with one of us here. And so that's what we would direct you to do. But maybe touch on LMIAs, because there's a lot of confusion about what they are. And there's a lot of corruption that exists within them as a result of how important they are to even permanent residents.
Yeah. All right. So the general rule is if you want to work for a company in Canada, usually that company has to hire a Canadian first, and they have to prove that they've tried to hire Canadians first. And the way that they do that is they advertise and recruit. And if they cannot find a Canadian to fill the position, then they are able, if they have properly advertised and recruited, to submit what's called that Labor Market Impact Assessment application, LMIA, and it goes to Service Canada, or Service Canada is also called ESDC, and that government agency is going to make a decision on whether they think the company needs a labor market impact assessment, meaning they've tested the labor market, they've tried to hire a Canadian for that job, and they really can't find one. And so now ESDC is going to say, yes, you're authorized to offer a position to a temporary foreign worker outside of Canada, or maybe somebody who has a different type of work permit in Canada, like a PGWP. So if the company is successful in getting that LMIA, then the worker can submit that application for a work permit, either from outside Canada, or if they're already in Canada with status on a work permit, for a change of conditions on their work permit, existing work permit. So Make sure, though, that that company who's applying for that LMIA, they cannot charge you. They are not allowed to charge you. It's a $1,000 application fee that the company has to pay to Service Canada. They are not allowed to charge you a penny of that amount of money. And also, that company should be hiring an immigration lawyer to help them with that process because it is really, really specific. I help companies with this often. And a lot of businesses just don't know what to do, where to start, what they have to prove for business legitimacy. If anything is wrong in any of those advertisements, it's getting refused. So really, they need to make sure that they have properly done their homework before they start advertising and recruiting. But none of that should be charged to the applicants. None of that should be charged back to the temporary foreign workers. It's all something that the company needs to pay for and go through.
I'm going to just flip over here, Alicia. So one thing I did a little short here. Is your Canadian job offer real or fake? So if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll find you can just search through the shorts. But this one right here, I actually covered just really quickly some key little things that you can look at to help you decide whether or not your job offer is actually legitimate or whether it's fake. So I encourage you to slide over and take a look. All right, the questions are piling in fast and furious. Let's see. Okay, we'll see what we can do with this. Okay, so Harshit says, I have one query. Like unpaid intern and financial analyst in India fall under which knock? Okay, so maybe you can clarify really quickly how we figure out what the proper knock is the right way. And it's not by title.
Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at the National Occupation Classification Codes, keep in mind that it's going to be switching to the new tier system. So you're looking at the 2021 knock as of November 16th. However, if you are looking for express entry and you have unpaid work, it's generally not going to give you points, but you do have to disclose what you've been doing in your prior personal history. So really, if you're looking at things that you're going to be claiming points for, you've got to make sure that it's high skilled and that you are paid for it. If it's things that are unpaid, then right away you can put that into your personal history. You're not going to disclose it in the work history because it's not going to give you points. When you try to figure out your knock, you're going to look at the lead statement. So it's that opening paragraph. And then you're also going to have the main duties. So when you look at the bullet points, there's going to be some that say may for some of the occupations. You don't have to do the ones that are optional, but out of the other bullet points, you need to meet the majority of the main duties.
Perfect. Sorry about that, everybody. Apparently, we know who wears the pants in our family, and it's the dog. All right. Okay, next question. This one is Monica. Monica says, hola, Mark and Alicia. Nice to see you. I hope I can see a live of you for sponsorship spouse greetings from Mexico. That is extremely well timed, Monica. I'm going to give you one of these, an applause, because coming up this month, the next course that we're offering is the spousal sponsorship course and the masterclass. You can actually subscribe right now and get access to the course materials. And then we're going to give you even more than you're asking for, because there is associated with this, if you scroll down to the bottom here, we've got a breakdown of all the things that we're doing, including all of the topics, lessons involved with that. And there is 4 hours of, and this should actually be 4 hours, 4 hours of live masterclass with myself, where I answer all of your questions, Monica. And all you have to do is just go over and click on the link below in the description, and you can access this. And this is actually well timed for you, because you can get them access to the course materials. The sooner the better. And then once the masterclass starts, then we jump on, and any of those questions you've got built up, there's 1 hour every evening that we do. And so, yeah, come slide over, Monica, and join us. But there will be, in addition, more videos that we're going to have targeting spousal sponsorship as we go forward. So stay tuned for that. All right, great, Monica. Okay, let's see what we have here. Thesura, as always, is in the house. Good to see you. Frequent attendee. And I think Thesura actually has a question. Let's see what we got here. So he says, I got my CBSA notes, and it's mentioned that the file... So Thesura is in this group of Express Entry alumnus that's been sitting around for so long, waiting for his application to be finalized. And I can't even remember Thesura. I think it was the beginning of the year. It was like February, I think. Was it this year, or was it even 2021? I can't remember. But anyways, so he says that the CBS notes show that the file is approved and RFV, which should be request for visa, I believe, dated 24th of October, but I haven't gotten any email or confirmation regarding the approval yet. Anything I can do from my end, Mark? We've had these discussions, haven't we, Tessera? Alicia, any thoughts on that one?
I mean,
Other than just empathy and we feel for you.
yeah. I mean, it's good news, right? It means that they are approving, they are moving forward. You should get it soon. Generally, I would just sit tight and hopefully it'll come in. It doesn't sound like there's anything that has gone off the rails or anything else you need to do. Web forms are so delayed right now. It's taking such a long time for them to get to them. So it just sounds like it'll come, and hopefully it'll come sooner rather than later.
Mhm. Okay, let's jump to a next question. Well, let's see. Harshit, I think we answered yours, but yeah, we're doing great here. Here's an interesting one. Okay, so Helios says CRS 495 here. Fingers crossed for next week. So what do you think? Think it's going to get down below 495, Alicia? Hey, we have to do this every time we have to speculate about the rounds of invitations. So, what's your thoughts? Do you think it's going to drop below 495?
Well, 495 is pretty healthy. I think that you've got a decent shot at that. If we take a look at the rounds of invitations, so we can see that the last one was, pretty much at that level. We're at 496, so you only need it to go down one CRS point here. This was what they scooped out before the last draw, and you'll see that those numbers, they used to be huge, right, Mark? Like
Mm-hmm.
the number of
Yep.
applicants in there was huge before,
Yep.
and it's finally coming down to, below 1,000 people, which is
Yep.
good to see. It means that actually levels are coming back to something that's reasonable for most people to attain. A lot of my clients have been like PhDs, they've been masters, they have English and French, and it's tough to get that around a 500 score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. So 495, I think you got a pretty good shot at it. Definitely. Okay, let's try this one here. This is from Froze. How are you today, Mark? I'm pursuing a 2-year college degree from Conestoga, and my question is whether I need to evaluate Wes, my bachelor's degree from India, if I apply for a PR under the CEC. Well, so he's looking to pursue a 2-year college degree and he has a bachelor's. So I think the answer is pretty clear here. What do you think,
Mhm.
Alicia?
Yeah. So take a look at the way that they evaluate your education. And depending on the length of your programs, you're going to possibly be able to claim two of those programs, one of which has to be a bachelor's degree, 3 or 4 years of duration. So if you've only had one, technically you could only provide your Canadian education, but you may be losing out on those points if you don't have that WES for any foreign education. So if you're doing a longer term program in Canada and it's your highest level of education, like if you were doing the bachelor's in Canada, you wouldn't necessarily have to do like a 1 year diploma or something foreign. But if you are looking at having a 4 year bachelor's and then you're doing a 2 year degree now, if you want to get points for two courses of education, one of which is the bachelor's degree, then you need to have that WES or any of the other education credential assessment organizations. Make sure that they get that assessed for you.
Yes. Okay, here's one that we get a lot, especially in this world of Express Entry, which we are helping a ton of people with their Express Entry applications right now. And yeah, we've got a lot on the go. And this is one that we see a lot of. So, okay, so Digsy Fit says, I just got my ITA for CEC, and I'll give you an applause for that. Congratulations. That's awesome. I just hit the 1 year of work experience. However, I was working remotely from June to September outside of Canada. Should I decline my ITA since it may not count as a full year?
And Digsy, I'd really encourage you to book a consult because we need to know more about this in order to be able to provide you advice. So it is possible that if you are working remotely and you're not physically inside of Canada, then it's possible that that may not count towards your 1 year of Canadian work experience. And you're right, you don't want to be accepting that ITA too early. If you have a really strong CRS and you can just make sure that you work for another couple months so that by the time you actually get that ITA and accept it, you're for sure over your 1 year mark, right? The 1,560 hours. But depending on, how many hours you have and how many weeks you've added up and whether that was authorized from your company, whether it was just a vacation for a few weeks, there's some other moving parts that we would need to discuss and take a look at your circumstances, because sometimes also people's status is running out, right? You might be getting close, bumping up to an expiry on a work permit. So it might be important to figure out what your other options are if you are going to delay the acceptance of that ITA.
Yeah. And I'd say I've had probably 5 or 6 clients just lately who are battling with this issue, Digsy. The reality is there's a risk to declining an ITA. If you decline, the minister could come around and say, hey, we're now going to do targeted draws as of now. And your knock code doesn't fit anymore. And human capital becomes less important. That's always a risk. But at the same time, if you're in a situation like this where there is a distinct possibility that, obviously you can't count Canadian work experience for time when you're working outside of Canada. Generally, that's the rule. Based on what you've described here, we absolutely want to take a closer look and give you the right advice, because it's your life, right? It's not only, will this work, but what does the future hold? So for individuals, generally, when we have clients that we are pretty confident they're going to get another ITA, we're more likely to consider, running the risk of declining the ITA. But if we've done an assessment and we know you're not eligible, then absolutely, there's no point proceeding forward. It's better to go back in and correct it. And interestingly, too, there's ways that you can deal with this in your profile when you're entering your work history, and so that it doesn't wrongly capture that time, because you want to get in you want to get into the pool as quickly as you can. You do. You want to be able to have a really good tiebreaker for when your profile was created. But at the same time, you don't want to expose yourself to waiting 4 or 5 months only to have your application refused because a smart officer, looks at your application and catches it. And the frustrating part, Alicia, is when you've got officers who don't catch it, and then everybody tells Digsy, oh, don't worry about it, I didn't have a problem, right? And that goes back to our Halloween
Well,
horror stories.
and the other thing is you never want to have a situation where immigration can say you misrepresented, right? That you're claiming falsely work experience that you ought not to have claimed. So it is a situation where you want to be really careful.
Yes. And that's a great segue into Skywalker here. It doesn't say if it's Luke or what it is, but anyways, if I update things via web form, can you be charged for misrepresentation? This is a pretty general question, but maybe you can just touch briefly on this whole world of misrep.
hmm So we did talk a little bit about it. We had a Halloween horror story, and Cedric was on talking about a horror story about misrepresentation. So generally, applicants have a duty of candor. And what does that mean? It means that you have a duty to tell the truth when you're submitting your immigration applications. And if you know that something is not right, if you've submitted an application and you made a mistake, or you had a representative submit it for you and you only now looked at it and you realized there was something wrong in there, you have a duty to correct that error. And so, for sure, if the only way to do that is by doing the web form, then you should be correcting what's on your application. Now, will that potentially lead to misrepresentation? Depending on what's happened, it might. But you coming forward and telling the truth is always better than hoping that nobody notices, because that is setting yourself up for misrepresentation.
Here's an interesting question that Sebastian is asking, which I've never had anyone ask before. Mark and Alicia, just a curious question. When someone sends an application under Express Entry, there's only one immigration officer that assesses the application, or there are multiple officers?
hmm it's
We know
interesting,
there's
Sebastian, because
two. Like we
yeah,
know that there's at least two.
yeah, because we can see when we get GCMS notes or when we do an access to information and privacy request on a file, you can see that there are different codes. Some of the officers, well, the officers never provide their names, but sometimes there's numbers or sometimes there's letters or office locations associated with the entries. So you can tell that there's, somebody who's assessing it for completeness, that first kind of completeness check to see whether that application is um, everything's been submitted properly and the documents are as requested. And then the next one is looking at whether the substantive application meets what the claimant is trying to claim, whether it's CEC or FSW, and that their work history checks out and they have all the points that they have claimed. The other thing that normally happens, though, is that it's not only IRCC officers, it could also get referred to CBSA officers for the background security clearance checks, especially if there's somebody who might have the same name or birthday as somebody who's showing up on a list of kind of a red list of people who've been flagged because of criminality.
All right. Next question here. Okay. Mariana says, when an employer has two addresses, one that's on the website, more readily available to the public, and one that's the address they put as the billing address, does it matter which one goes on my reference letter?
So yeah, Mariana, this is something that I'd need to look at a little bit more carefully with you to try to figure out exactly how you are providing your evidence of your employment, right? So what is on the letterhead from the employer? What are your pay stubs showing? Which office location were you working in? All these are important. So what I normally do is I kind of put on my, if I were an immigration officer hat, what would I be concerned about when I look at this application? And if it doesn't make sense, right? If you're saying that you're working at this office, but the letter from head office is coming from one address and payroll is coming from another one, and maybe one of the addresses isn't in Canada, you're going to really want to carefully address that so that it makes sense. And it has to be honest, but make sure that you provide a letter of explanation if there are things that are a little bit more nuanced or interesting about how your company is set up.
Yes. All right. Yes, and Shimon, I will absolutely answer your question. So he says, I was working while pursuing my undergrad in my home country. Will this work experience be counted for Express Entry FSW? I have tax returns as a proof of employment. This is a great question because so many people they just don't understand. They're just confused. And largely it's because they don't understand what it takes to get into the pool. And this is where they're conflating CEC with FSW. But Alicia, what are your thoughts for Anshuman here?
So, Anjuman, for federal skilled worker, the minimum requirement is that you have to have at least 1 year of continuous full-time work. So, over a period of, a year or adding up to a year, continuous full-time work. And that can be outside of Canada. And it could be while you are going to school, but it still has to be full-time. So, it really depends on how many hours you were working in that job. If you can show that you were working, and full time is considered to be 30 hours. So if you can show that you were working full time, 30 hours per week, while you were still doing a school, that might be okay. But if it was less than 30 hours, then it's not going to count as full time work. Once you've met that minimum entry requirement, then you can get into the pool. But whether or not you have enough points is going to be determined by how many years of foreign work experience, what's your level of education, and what education credential assessment do you have, and of course language, because that makes a huge difference in your CRS score.
Yes. Okay, this one is from Josevich. He says, will there be issues when my NOC code in my home country is different from my NOC code in Canada? Both tier 3 doing Manitoba PNP CEC. And this is definitely a triangle one, Josevich, because the requirements for the Manitoba PNP vary depending upon the program you're going through. And with CEC, well, that's Canadian Experience Class. So you can have work experience both in Canada and outside Canada. That's tier 3 that could potentially give you CRS points. But does it have to for the purposes of the MPNP? Alicia, I don't think there's much that we can really add for Josevich in this question.
Yeah, just be really careful in terms of the program requirements for the particular program that you're looking at. And I know, for example, in Alberta, it can get quite tricky depending on what you've put as your work experience in your work permit, right? So before you've come to Canada, some people get tripped up on this if they have claimed certain types of job titles and associated a knock with it, and then they try to come to the province and then they want to go through a PNP program. Some of those programs want to show that you've done similar types of work prior to coming to the province. And if you put something else on your work permit application, or if it was not aligning, it may in fact be an issue.
Marlene, good to see you connecting in from Cuba. Hello to you. All right. This person is actually in our Express Entry Law private Facebook group. That's why they only show up as a generic Facebook user. So what are the basic requirements for visiting Canada is really what's asked. So it's
Yeah,
kind of a kind of a high level question, but a good one nonetheless.
yeah. So the biggest thing is which country are you from, right? And so some nationals of some countries are going to require in a visa, an actual TRV or temporary resident visa that's affixed to their passport before they can come to Canada. And if that's the case, then there are a number of things that you've got to show regarding temporary intent. So really, you have to show that you're legitimately coming to Canada for a visit. It's not for a permanent purpose, it's for a temporary purpose. And you have to show why you're coming to Canada, so what the purpose of your entry is, and how and why you're going to go back to your home country. So, what are your ties to your home country? Do you have a job there? Have you traveled internationally and complied with laws of other countries in the past? Can you show that you have enough money to afford your plane ticket there and back? Those are all key things that immigration officers are going to look at. They'll also look at, have you been refused other immigration applications to Canada or other countries in the past? So take a look at there's some good information on the website, and I know we've written blogs about this too, and we're talking about temporary and permanent intent. So look to see what immigration, yeah, take a look at our blog, and we have some good resources here.
All right. Okay, next question. This one I can probably answer pretty quick, but so Catan says, which knock is preferable, 2133 or 0912 as an electrical engineer working in power utilities? So as we talked about before, this really comes down to the duties, and we'd encourage you to book a consult so we can actually go through it. And a lot of the consults that I do that relate to Express Entry, we always touch on this, always. And in fact, in our Express Entry, in the Express Entry course, which I'm not sure if we've updated it yet, the study permit course, I'm excited about this one. It's been like 4 years in the making. But the Express Entry course, we just finished the last one. And I think the last week in November is when we're going to do our next series of master classes. But you can get in right now, start accessing the course material. And in here, we have some tools that are actually pretty cool. And I just want to show when it comes to knock, because a lot of people are asking questions about knock codes. So I'm just going to log into my version as if I'm a student of my own courses. And I'm going to scroll down here to our Express Entry course. And in here, through the help of the fine lawyers in Holthe Immigration Law, we've actually developed a number of little tools. And if we go to the Record of Employment section, we have a number of tools, including what we call our knock selection tool template. And this is a little tool that we use to help properly reflect to an immigration officer why you think you've chosen the right knock code. And it spells it out in a way that an officer just makes them really easy to say, yeah, okay, I see where you're coming from. So yeah, so that's a part of the course, and I recommend that you guys come on over and subscribe to that. But ultimately, it comes down to the duties and whether you've performed a substantial number of those main duties, as well as all of the activities in the lead statement on those knocks. And of course, understand, Catan, here in just, what are we, a week out, 2 weeks out, Alicia? It's going to be shifting to tier. So you'll also, all of you who are wondering, oh no, what the heck am I going to do now? This is what we do. So if you book a consult, usually in a consult, I will help someone to determine if they've got the right knock code. I won't review the whole application. There's no way I'm going to do that. But often in a consult, I will sit down with a client if they have their reference letter. Yes, your actual duties that you're going to present to the officer. Then in those consults, we can go through and we can help you to determine where you sit within tier 3, within tier period, just to make sure that you're still good to go. Now, 2133 and 0911, like that level of work is going to fit within the new 2021 tier system, but it's a matter of allocating it properly.
And I do want to add, I had a consult this week where you do have to be careful because some types of work permits for people who are looking at claiming CEC work experience, sometimes they have employer-specific or occupation-specific work permits. And if your work permit is particularly coded to one NOC, and then you go and try to change that NOC, that can cause all sorts of problems. So do be careful if you are working in Canada already under some sort of employer-specific or occupation-specific work permit. It is really important to figure out which occupation your employer put when they were doing their application, because that can significantly affect how you can claim your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a question I'll just touch on very, very quickly. Mark says, hey, can you give me an idea of how much will the payment or cost be to basically hire an immigration lawyer? Thank you. Well, generally speaking, lawyers charge all kinds of things when they're representing people. You have to look and see, what they're offering for the price that they're charging. Immigration consultants offer a wide variety of charges for their services. And the key for you guys, and I think I'm going to do a video on this, is to really understand what you're getting for what you're paying. Sometimes representatives don't do anything other than have you fill out your, the basic questionnaire. If it's Express Entry, they then fill it into their representative portal and submit it. And, they don't even vet anything. They just put exactly what you have told them in there. They don't watch or, assess to see if there's something that maybe you've made a mistake. And so when they're charging you $1,000 or whatever it is, or $2,000 or $3,000, whatever, it doesn't matter. Make sure that you know exactly what you're going to get. With respect to our firm, all our fees are all listed right here on our page. So all I have to do is click on our fees, and you can pull it down, and then you can see we have them. Now obviously it depends on the size of the family, but we always have a starting point for all of the services that we offer, whether it's work, whether it's rejected or delayed applications, which are happening a lot, whether it's inadmissibility or misrepresentation, and then even some additional legal services that we offer as well. So this is, we're very transparent in what we charge. So there's no mysteries, and there's no secret hidden costs that get tossed in at the last minute to mess people up. So, all right. Ajay says, I'm in a closed work permit for 4 years and will expire on April the 23rd, which I'm assuming is 2023. So April 2023. Not April 23rd. Is an existing job offer valid, or should I ask for an extension to get more points for permanent residence? Once again, ring the bell here.
And Mark, maybe you can pull up the article that I did on can I claim arranged employment points? Because Ajay, this is a question that is really important to get right. So be very careful about whether or not, so there you go, can I claim CRS points? Here you go for a job offer in my Express Entry application. And there is a legal definition on what arranged employment is. And so when you go in and you're answering the questions in the Express Entry profile, it is asking you a whole bunch of things to see whether you're going to qualify for arranged employment, which is what the ministerial instructions say. And then depending on whether or not that job meets all the requirements, that's going to determine whether you can properly say yes to those questions. And most of the time, you have to be able to show that the employer's offer is going to be valid, or they intend to continue to employ you for a year after you get your PR. So be really careful if you know that your work permit is expiring in April, because that's less than a year.
Yes. All right. Next, let's see here. Okay, this one is a little bit, this is more one of these questions, but I just want to pull it up. It's a little bit kind of convoluted, but I know what's being asked here. So Ask Me says, PPR received by spouse and children, non-accompanying. So I passport request, I think even at this stage, and it's a PNP OINP. My question is, what about the recalculation of points as I'm adding and accompanying them now? So they originally listed their spouse and children as non-accompanying. And now at the very last stage, now they want to try to add their spouse in. Am I safe as I received an ITA at 1,057 CRS points and the PNP draw was 750. And so this one, my friend, is a classic example of where I ring that bell and strongly encourage you to slide back here, because it is way more complicated than you can imagine. Like the assessments that we have to do to try to determine if you can actually do that, and whether or not it will unravel your ability to continue forward with your PR. Alicia, maybe you can touch on 11.2 just a little bit.
Yeah, so in the completeness check, there is kind of a guideline for what immigration officers are looking at when somebody's trying to add accompanying or non-accompanying family members and trying to add them as accompanying after they have received that, after they've submitted that EAPR. One of the things you have to be careful of is misrep. One of the things you have to be careful of is if you aren't meeting the settlement funds. And even though you're doing a PNP program, some of those PNPs have settlement fund requirements also. And so if you're adding family members now, and if you didn't have enough in terms of the settlement funds to support a family of 3 or however many children you have, then that's something that could unravel your application as well. So as long as you properly disclosed your family members and had them properly declared, that's important. And then trying to add them later, you'll have to make sure that you're still meeting all the program requirements.
Here's an interesting one here, Alicia. Pujitha says, hey, Mark and Alicia, my question is there any possibility that IRCC could have missed reviewing a document that is in the portal? Any possibility, any remote possibility, Alicia? Having what,
Absolutely, there's a
3.5 minutes to
possibility.
review an Express Entry application?
Yeah. So for sure, yes, immigration officers miss things. You may have uploaded something and for some reason they overlook it, or maybe you've combined documents into a PDF and they just didn't see that it was at the end. For sure, they might have missed it. It's even more likely that they miss something if you've done a web form after the fact, because those web forms have been so delayed that it was taking months for immigration to even open them. And in the meantime, sometimes that application has already been assessed and approved or possibly refused in the meantime. So if that web form hasn't gotten matched to your application, it is possible that they may completely miss seeing a document. So it's tricky. Make sure that you keep copies of when you submit those web form applications and what sort of documents you attach to at least try to prove, yes, I submitted this and I submitted it like right away within a reasonable time of submitting my application. I realized there was a mistake. I did it like 3 days later. That stuff, they should have matched it up to your profile. You might have grounds for reconsideration if they refuse, so definitely reach out to us.
Darshan says, hi, Mark and Alicia. Is intercompany transfer deputation letter sufficient to claim 50 points for offer letter?
So Darshan, go back to that article that I wrote, right? Take a look at that because I actually go through what the legislation is, what the ministerial instructions say, what are the requirements for being able to claim arranged employment. There are 3 different scenarios in terms of how they break it down. It depends on how long you have been working in Canada. So what most people get wrong is if it's an LMIA exempt, so if it's an intercompany transfer, which does not require an LMIA, then you have to have been working for a year for that employer in Canada before you can try to claim those points. And then they also have to say that they are going to continue to employ you, or they intend to employ you for 1 year after you've got your PR. So those are the things that trip most people up.
Yeah. And obviously within this process, Darshan, like we're happy to help provide guidance, direction. I'll give you a practical example. So some of our beloved IT companies here in Canada who like to bring people over from India, love to keep you as workers and not support you in obtaining your permanent residence. So even though you've got a work permit that's intercompany transfer for 2 years, and IRCC says, hey, will the employer at least offer you a job for 1 year following obtaining your permanent residence? That's kind of one of the pillars to a job offer. Even though you have every component there, unless that employer is willing to give you the letter in the proper format, then you run a huge risk of IRCC basically rejecting it. Now, with that being said, I can guarantee that there are people out there that took their deputation letter tossed it in there and an officer missed it or didn't look at it carefully. But if you are wanting to make sure that you are eligible for those points and you are able to demonstrate your eligibility, then it requires a new letter from your employer in the specific wording that Alicia set out in her blog and in that we talk about in our course. And we've got some sample job offer letters and things in there as well. But it sucks, Darshan. It really does. When you've got an employer who you're working hard for and they're just too freaking awful to support you in your PR. You know, when you're here and they'd rather keep you a servant on a work permit. There we go. That's a good comment, but it's the truth. And I care more about you guys. So there we go. That's my views on that. Okay. All right. We're just about at the very end here, Darshan and Alicia. So let's see what else we got here. Just a couple more we'll wrap up with. Okay, here's one from Amitaj. He says, hey, Mark and Alicia, and we've got a lot of Express Entry related ones here. I got my ITA in a last draw under CEC, but am I eligible for both but I am eligible for both CEC and FSW. Do I need to show any proof of funds? And so
Amitaj, this is something that I talk with my clients about all the time. So when you're preparing that application, if you did get your ITA under CEC, then you can show immigration, look, I don't actually have to provide proof of funds because the ITA was under CEC. But do be careful in terms of what you're putting into your EAPR fields. You want to make sure that you've answered that question truthfully. So if you did put a number in there, make sure that you do have that same amount in your bank account. And there's different ways that we address this. And we have a little template letter of explanation about proof of funds for CEC applicants specifically, where we just make sure that we help people navigate what do you put in your EAPR field and what do you do as your supporting letter.
Yeah. I'm going to pull up Anya's comment here, which is a great question. Why is it getting PR so crazy hard and complicated? My relatives immigrated to Canada in the early 30s and 50s. They did well and had no education, language skills, and well, they did well. So Alicia, what has changed from now compared to the 30s and 50s?
Yeah, and I just say the world has changed, right? Everything has become more competitive in terms of countries are out there trying to recruit the best and the brightest and the people that they think are going to work the hardest and contribute to the economy. And back in the 30s and the 50s, when Canada was just trying to slowly grow its population and there were, a few areas that needed some more immigrants to work the land, it was a different kind of scenario. Now it's pretty competitive in terms of who can get PR, and I think Canada knows that it's a fairly desirable country in which to live because we have so many benefits, right? We have social services, we have healthcare, we have a very stable, generally, society. And so lots of people want to come, which means that they can be a little bit choosy about who they pick.
Mm-hmm. I can't help but pull this up. So this summer, I went to visit my cousins. Actually, that was kind of cool. Give me a second here. I'm going to show you guys something that's cool here. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to click on here. I've got my Google map up here, and my cousins live in Dawson Creek. And so let me just show you guys this. I love how it does this here. So let's just zoom in here on Dawson Creek. Let's see if it'll pull us in. Oh, I love this. Here we go, Alicia. Boom. Okay. So my cousins live right in this area, and I'm going to back this off just a little bit now that I found it. I'm going to back this off, and I want you guys to look at Canada. So do you see all of this land here? This is really neat. Do you see all of this plots of these are like hay fields, and interspersed amongst them is stretches of bush and things like that. But this here, all of this area here, if you look at all of the trees and the lands around the river, all of this was bush like this right here. So this stretch here, this was all solid bush, trees, and like nothing was cleared. But in those time periods, the 50s and 60s, Dawson Creek was the head of all of the exploration, the oil and gas, all those kinds of things. It was like the headquarters. And so and my cousins actually live right over here, right on this this beautiful little river valley here. There's the Alberta border right through here. Anyways, and so these, so all of this territory, and you can see this actually gives you a little bit better view. See how heavy that bush is there. So they basically gave people land to go and clear it and settle it. And where is this located? Well, if you pull back here further, and you can see this is the Alberta border here. Okay, right through here. I'm still backing out. So this is Alberta, and this is way up here where they were, Dawson Creek. And Alicia is right here in Calgary, and I'm in Lethbridge. And so you can see how thick this part is here. But up there, they really, really cleared a ton of land for farming. And so when I think about Anya's question there, it was a different time, you guys. And it's crazy to believe when I went up there and drove that this was just solid bush that someone had gone and cleared, like my uncle, who is, just turned 80 this year. So there we go. We're in different times, super competitive. And so yes, when it's more competitive, immigration looks for every opportunity they can to refuse applications, especially officers that are under high stress. So, if it takes 5 minutes to find that your knock code is wrong, or 5 minutes to realize you've submitted a color copy of a German police certificate versus the color one that's required, super easy to send a letter. Oh, sorry, your application is incomplete. You can go back into the pool, but will you get an ITA again? So yes, us crazy immigration lawyers. Why in the world is there an immigration lawyer at all, right? Alicia and I both went through general legal training, right? We could have done whatever the heck we wanted to coming out of law school. But we settled on immigration. Why? Because there was a need. Because we saw people whose lives were literally destroyed because they either listened to the wrong person for advice, or they hired someone who they thought knew what they were doing and put their trust in them only to see things fall apart. Which, from a practical example, is what happened to Igor, who works in our office, and his wife when they were in the US. They hired a crappy immigration attorney in the US who botched things for them. And and fortunately, an opportunity opened to Canada, and he connected with us. And now he's going to be, probably our next lawyer here to join the ranks as he finishes up his last few courses to get his bar call to Alberta, well, at least to join us as an articling student initially and to go forward. So there we go, Anya. There we go. Lots of cool stuff we're talking about here. All right. Any last passing comments, Alicia, as we wrap up this version of the Canada Immigration Live Q&A? Any?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say, to be fair to the Canadian government, I think really they have taken a good look at what makes immigrants successful. And they do a lot of statistical analysis, and there's a lot of immigrant serving settlement agencies and things like that. And by and large, one of the biggest things is your ability to communicate clearly in English or French. And they found that that is one of the strongest factors showing how well somebody's going to be able to adapt and settle in Canada. And so that's also why they've been really pushing those language factors as well as the job offers. So those two things, English plus the ability to have a job offer, is really where immigration is pushing now, because of the statistics basically showing that that makes people much more likely to be able to hit the ground running, to be able to kind of integrate into Canadian society and afford everything they need to do to afford living in Canada.
Absolutely. The Sura, I cannot believe this. The Sura was in batch 1 of the e-masterclass, the first one that I did. I can't believe it's been that long, back in January of 2021. Oh, you're so close, my friend. Hang in there. You are so close. I know that there's others out there who really, really wanted their questions answered, and we weren't able to get to them today. Remember, you guys, when you have a question that's really, really urgent, that usually indicates to me that it's something that directly affects you and the choices you're making with your immigration path. And so we strongly encourage you, if you didn't get your questions answered, to slide over. There's a link in the description, no matter where you're watching us, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and you can book a consult with us and let us help you. We're here for that purpose. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks, Alicia. We'll see you next week.